Let's go ahead and get diving into today's training on basic capture tasks that can increase your chances of winning federal government contracts. Really, it's simple. You hear me talk about process all the time if you've come to my training before. And so these basic capture tasks are around there. What I like to say is that if you're just responding blind to an opportunity that you throw into your pipeline, then really it's just at best a low price, technically acceptable play. And anybody who's been in government contracting long enough knows that LPTA, lowest price, technically acceptable, is a horrible place to be. At best you might win it, but you begin to have a loss or very minimal profit. What's going to be in a business when your profit margin is minimal? All you government personnel, look away for 1 second. But when we're in business, we want to make money. That's the only reason we're in business. We do all this other good stuff. But if our purpose was to do good stuff only, we'd be a nonprofit. If our purpose is to make money, we create an LLC or a corporation, right? So we're a business to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. When you make money, you're feeding the country. You're helping hire people. So there's a lot of good that comes from making money. And when you respond blind, you're not making as much money as you could. You're doing this LPTA play, which is not good for your company. I don't think it's healthy for your company. And when you think about capture, an opportunity comes into your pipeline, that's sales, right? This whole sales lifecycle begins in business development, goes through capture, and goes to proposals. And sales is about understanding your customer need, getting in there early on, talking with them about it, understanding their need from various angles, right? Sometimes from the requirements, sometimes from the acquisition approach that they take. There's needs in various ways. And what I'm going to teach you today related to basic capture tasks, it fundamentally is advanced qualifying. When you see an opportunity, you like it, and you get ready to put it in your pipeline, you're basically qualifying an opportunity right then and there in real time. And you decide to put it in your pipeline. Well, then you need to go through another qualifying phase, a mature qualifying phase. And so I just call it advanced qualifying. And in my sales pipeline, when people go through this and a little bit more, they're basically moving through, what we call a gate from one sales stage to the next. So in today's training, I'm going to drive into those basic capture tasks. I'm going to start with why it's important to break down capture into tasks. Not just have an opportunity and say, hey, I'm going to capture on it. What are you doing, right? So understanding that is the first step that I want to talk about. Then I'm going to go through, I have 20 basic tasks that I think everybody should do on every single opportunity that comes into the pipeline. If you can't or won't do it, then why have a pipeline, right? Why have something that's tracking opportunities if you're not going to do anything with it? So these 20 tasks will tell you what you should do with it. And then the third thing, last one is we're going to wrap up with who can help you. Who are the different stakeholders? Most of them obviously are in the government with the customer. So who can help you gather the information around these basic tasks that I'm going to teach you about? So I'm going to answer that question for you as well, give you some advice. If you don't know who I am, my name is McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market, and since 2018, I've been teaching like you that government contract is not a secret, it's just a process. Process goes from A to Z, and when we follow the process, we have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for your pipeline, for it to deliver repeatable, predictable results to your company. If you haven't done so already, do me a favor, put your company name into the chat, your core competency. Use 2 or 3 words to help everybody begin to remember who you are and what you sell. If you were here in previous training, just a little shout out to yesterday, and you're waiting on some handouts, I'll get them to you. Just busy couple of days, or actually busy couple of weeks, but I'll get back to you and get it to you. And feel free to shoot me a reminder. It never bothers me because I'll just get it to you. As long as you throw a please and a thank you in there, I'm happy to help at any given point. All right, let's dive into today's topic. Beginning with just why is it important to break down capture? I'm a lot of things, right? I'm a salesperson, I think, first and foremost. I'm a business owner, but I'm a project manager. I live and breathe on project management and process improvement. And so I take everything and I break it down. Stephen Covey describes one of his habits is begin with the end in mind. And the idea is you're reverse engineering. I'm kind of doing the same thing here with capture. And so one of the reasons that it's important to break down your capture tasks is because right out of the gate, it begins to help you validate that the opportunity is real. We often find opportunities go into our pipeline, and maybe they just have no life. They're not going to turn into a real opportunity. And so we want to know that early on. And the sooner we can get some of these tasks done, which I'll talk about in the next slide, the sooner we can get these done, the sooner we can say, hey, this is a real opportunity. It's not one of those ones they just threw in the forecast, et cetera. The second thing is it helps you gain an initial understanding of the opportunity. When you're looking at the opportunity and you're trying to decide whether it's a fit for you, what it's all about, et cetera, doing these initial tasks will help you have that initial opportunity or initial understanding about the opportunity. When you finish these basic tasks, you'll have this ability to do a bid, no bid decision, right? We call these gates. When you look at something after an official amount of work, and then you're going to go to the next phase in your sales cycle, we call it a gate review. And this is a good stage to be able to do it. You'll see the information I have in here. It's a great point to be able to look at an opportunity and say, should we still be working on it? I really use it as a criteria for whether somebody's doing a good job on my team, frankly, not to be brutal, but when I look at what you might be doing on an opportunity, doing capture on it, if you can't do what I'm about to show you, or if we can't do it, right, then we're going to know we're not doing our job. Either you're not doing your job, or we collectively as the company are not doing the job. And that job is to understand an opportunity. It's in our pipeline. What I'll show you in the 20 tasks are all doable. If we can't do it, it's because either the opportunity is probably not that real and we can't get traction, or we're not good at our jobs. If we're not good at our jobs, we just improve our process. You know, we develop our skills, we get better with our process. More often than not, though, it's the government's problem, you know, a problem we have with the government, which goes back to that whole, is it real? Is it worth bidding or not bidding? And the sooner you can get bad opportunities out of your pipeline, the sooner you can shift that energy more to really an opportunity that has a real chance of winning. And the last reason why it's important to break down capture tasks is that it makes it easier to manage when you just see small tasks. In software development, when we're doing agile software development, we take big software development projects and break them down into stories. And these stories are basically features. And when you look at the features, you break those down into tasks. And a task should be 2 to 4 hours. That's the general rule around it. And the idea is any given task can get done in a single day. When you have a task that goes too far out, one, it seems a little overwhelming, but two, worse, it seems like it never gets done. But if you break it down that we know it can get done in a single day or a small amount of time, then you move forward. Well, the tasks that I'm going to do for capture, it's that same idea. How do we break it down to the smallest point where we know we can get it done today, or we know it's a manageable amount of effort? And then at that point, you can add 2 or 3 each day to getting them done. But you see real progress in your sales efforts when you break it down into specific tasks. So let's talk about 20 of those tasks and the information you should be gathering. And as I go through, I'm going to explain. Some of you guys are more experienced than others. I'm going to explain on each one of these. They're important to have and what you're looking for, right? So the first one is the opportunity name. This is the name the government is giving it. You want to be able to track it on the government's name, because if you ever go researching, if you're talking about it to teammates or the government, you want to use the official title for a particular opportunity. Like, CISA IMPS is one I'm working on right now. That's I think the short name and the long name kind of together. But the opportunity name is important, and same thing with the acronym, which I just said, right? CISA IMPS. You want to track those, because if the government is calling a particular opportunity, and I can't remember what IMPS stands, but on that, they're probably calling it IMPS, right? And they'll just say IMPS, IMPS. Well, if you're not used to saying the acronym, you miss it. It's kind of like if you don't know about the acronyms the government uses to call themselves. For example, Naval Information Warfare Center is called NAVWAR, right? I mean, there's names and there's acronyms. You want to know them both so that you begin to feel more comfortable with the discussion. Number 3 is work areas. This one, and these aren't necessarily in the order I would grab them. I just put them in the most logical order for the moment as I was preparing the training. But the work areas ties back to your company. I did a previous training where I talk about how do you identify slam dunk opportunities. And it begins with knowing what your core competency are or is, and what the work areas that support that core competency, what those work areas are. So for example, if you do cybersecurity, maybe you've got governance and risk management and compliance and operations and engineering. Well, those are the work areas related to cybersecurity. Maybe in cybersecurity, you have red team stuff, blue team, purple team. And the idea is you need to know what work areas you work in, what's a good opportunity. And so when you have an opportunity in the pipeline, number 3, you should be able to go into that field. These are all fields within your sales pipeline. You should be able to go in there and choose from a determined list, not writing it in, but a determined list. This is our work area. These are our work areas, and this is what we're great at. You need to choose the ones that it fits. This is a cybersecurity opportunity. Okay, that's why we're going after it. It's not some random one. The next two are just identification numbers. You don't have to worry about having a GovWin number, but most of us, as we start getting a little bigger, we have access to GovWin either through friends, Netflix, right? or you got your own subscription, right? And a GovWin number is a good one because when you start working with more and more teammates that are doing, let's say, 5 million and more, 10 million, 100 million, $1 billion, all of us tend to operate on what's the GovWin number. And so even if you don't have access to GovWin, when you're doing some of your research, you can try to find that number through teammates, et cetera. But when you have it, it's a good one. And more importantly, you can see if GovWin's tracking on it because they do some sales efforts. It's important to just monitor that. Don't use them as the only activity on your capture, but it's just one more resource like Wikipedia is a unofficial source. Solicitation number, that's whatever's coming on, the RFI or the RFP. If you don't have a new solicitation number yet because it's a long-range acquisition, forecasted opportunity or something, just use the old one. Just get it in there for the moment. And in your CRM, you should, or your pipeline, you should have a comment field where you're saying, hey, we've only got the old solicitation number. We'll come back and get it later. Coming down from that, number 6, 7, 8, and 9. These are the fun ones for me, right? You would think these are some basic ones, but I see people struggle with this. So when you think who you're going after, let's say you're going after the Navy, PEO Digital would be the program office, number 8. So the agency, the command would be NAVWAR, if they're fitting under that, right? And then above NAVWAR is the Navy, Department of Navy. Forget about DOD for a second, right? So you want to be able to track that stuff because if the Navy is your target customer, your target department, then tracking on the breakdown is really important. Each one of these is different. You might have experience in the Navy, but not down at NAVWAR. Maybe you've done stuff at NAVSUP. And so beginning to put it in separate fields is really important for 6, 7, and 8, because later on, when you start doing an analysis of what you're doing. The other thing, though, is number 8. If you can't tell me what pro office this opportunity is for, then how on earth do you really expect to know anything about this opportunity? And it goes back to that LPTA. If I can't tell you what program office this opportunity is for, then I'm telling you, I really don't know anything about this opportunity. Number 9 is kind of like that. The contracting office sometimes is the exact same office as the agency or program office, but other times it's a whole different group, right? Let's just take the Air Force or Army, right? They have a whole Army contracting command. So maybe that office is doing the acquisition side. They're the contract shop, but somebody else is the program shop. This is very important because capture is about influencing and shaping the opportunity requirements and acquisition approach. And so when you have 8 and 9 populated, you're telling me that you understand who the end user customer is, the program office, and who the focus of power is, the contracting shop. They're the ones who are in the NAICS code. They're the ones who determine the contract vehicle. They're the ones who determine the set aside, et cetera. And so number 9 is really important. And if you're too lazy, I said this very softly, too lazy to dig that up, then what you're communicating to me is that you're not actually doing capture. You're not actually trying to influence the acquisition approach because you haven't even taken the time to find out who the contract office is, right? So this is a task in there. By the way, I have a whole set of training, like each one of these tasks. When I work with customers, I build out procedure steps for how do I find the contracting shop? Where do I begin to look? What do I begin to do? You can do this same thing. Learn how to do it and write down the process steps so everybody in your company can begin to learn how to do it. Number 10, this is where we're sliding into the people that are related to the opportunity. So here it's the contracting officer. If you don't know this, contracting officer is KO in the military and CO pretty much everywhere else. And the reason it's CO and KO is because in the military, CO stands for commanding officer. So we use contract or KO over there and CO in the civilian side. You know, I wish the whole federal government would just call it KO and be done with it, but I don't make that stuff up. So you want to know the name, number, and email address for the KO, the small business professional who works with that KO, that contracting shop, because that person is basically your advocate from the small business side in there. And then the PCR, the procurement center representative, overseeing that particular agency. If I use NAVWAR as an example, again, if you go to the SBA.gov site, you will find a list of PCRs, procurement center representatives, and each one of them lays out which agencies they have oversight on. These people are great advocates when you're trying to gather information. They're talking to those contracting officers all the time. Maybe you can't even find that contracting officer. These guys would be great people. These men and women are there to help the government, but also to help make sure opportunities that should go small do go small. So these three people, they're the first three people I want to see that you're putting into a pipeline. And at the moment, I'm just assuming you work for me and I'm in charge of sales, right? But I want to see these three people in, because if you don't have these three people in the pipeline, name, number, and email, then it's telling me, again, you haven't taken the time to really figure out how to pursue information, because you don't have three of the biggest advocates to gathering that information. And one of the things that's really important is your own research isn't the only way that you can get that. I'm going to talk on the next slide about who can help you find this information, who can help you find the names, numbers, and emails from number 10. All right, let's move over to the right side. Number 11 is the RFP date and the start date. These are the only two dates I care about, really. I don't care about the award date, et cetera, because I don't get money when the award happens first. Second, the award always slips. But the RFP date and the start date, they're fairly firm until they move. But the RFP date is vital for everybody in the company to know, because we got a general idea of when this request for proposal is going to drop and when we need all our capture stuff done, because it's going to switch to proposal phase. And then the start date's really important, because anybody in the company is responsible for making sure we deliver on time, need to track on when do we have to have these 5 people or 20 people working on the contract. So that start date's a really important one. Generally, the RFP date is estimated, right, until they ever put a stake in the ground. And then the start date, you typically tie it to a previous opportunity, the current opportunity. If it's got to end a period of performance, then you'll have your start date loosely. Number 12, contract length. And I say in months, not years. And the reason is because as you move forward and you're doing advanced calculations in your pipeline, the rest of the company, when they're looking, and maybe you're a small company and it's all you, but the rest of the company, when they start looking at the pipeline, they can predict revenue at the monthly level. So that's really important, because if you get a 5-year contract and it begins in the middle of the year, let's say in June, then it's only 6 months, 7 months of revenue for this year and 5 months of revenue for the 5th year, if that makes sense, the out year. And so that's important stuff as people are planning how much revenue are we bringing into the company. Number 13, speaking of revenue, is just I capture the total contract value. If you don't know for a fact what that is, then you got to guess. When you have a pipeline, the whole point of the pipeline is to predict revenue. We need a number in there. Somehow you have to be able to get that, even if you're guessing early on. That is totally okay, because as you continue to do capture and get more information, you'll have more knowledge to be able to update certain things. You'll update your technical approach. Hey, we're really going to go this way. We can also update. Actually, it's not going to be 2 FTEs. It's going to be 20 FTEs, that kind of thing. But start with some understanding at all of what we think this contract value would be. If you can't do that, then I would submit you're going after an opportunity that's not in your sweet spot. My last company was all SharePoint, Microsoft SharePoint. If it was a SharePoint opportunity, it was coming in, I could predict the contract value without anything except for the scope, right? The task. I could look and go, I know exactly what you want. My minimum value is this, because this is what it will take to do the work. If you can do that, you're going after opportunities that are in your work area, in your sweet spot, your core competency. If you can't, I would submit that maybe that opportunity is going outside of the ops that you want. Number 14, this is where you're tracking, is this going to be a set aside, right? Is this going to be full and open, total small, woman set aside, service disabled set aside, 8A or hub zone set aside? It's important to know that. You can only prime for some of them, right? Except for a few companies, you can prime all of them, lucky people. But generally, if it's a woman-owned set aside and you're not a woman-owned small business, you can't go after that as a prime. The sooner you know that, the better. And so early on, you want to know that. You also want to know, like when I have a field like number 14, competition type, it's important for me to know not determined is a choice. It has not yet been determined. And that's really good, because it tells me that I'm going to go after, and there's a difference, by the way, between unknown, I don't know, and not determined. The government has yet to make a determination, because then I want to get into the contracting officer and influence that decision. Like, hey, you should really go to a woman-owned small business. We're a woman-owned small business. We'd be great. There's 15 others. I'd be happy to help you get them to respond. Where are you on sources sought? Whatever it is, but that's capture, right? You're trying to find out where they are and how they're moving forward. But 14 you want to get, and 15 goes along with this a little bit. This is where you're beginning to understand the opportunities. Is it a recompete, or a consolidated opportunity? Those are basically the 3 types of ops that come out. That's really important to understand because if it's recompete or consolidated, you're going to have a lot of competition with the incumbents in there to begin with. And so you really want to be digging down on that. If it's new, that's an important thing because you want to figure out, well, why did this new requirement come up all of a sudden, right? Where did this come from? What was being done before? And that's number 20, and I'll talk about that in a second. 16, 17, 18, these are all pretty straightforward, right? What contract vehicles are coming out on? If you don't know, or if it is not yet determined, go influence it. 17 is location and state, just where's the place of performance? You want to know that because that's where you're going to have to hire people, right? Do they require you have an office open there if you're going to win the contract? Things like that. All this information is leading you to bullet number 18 here, whether you're going to prime or sub. Whether an opportunity is in your pipeline is the bid, no bid. But whether you prime it or sub it is dependent on how strong you feel about it, right? So the sooner you know this, the sooner you go find that type of teaming partner. You can watch training I did yesterday that talks about how do you find and build strong teams. 19, you want to capture the incumbent. If this is a recompete or consolidated, get them in there right away. The sooner you get them in, the sooner the company can rally around. Let's go ghost them. Let's go figure out what are they doing well. Let's go find out who their employees are, all that kind of stuff, right? Let's get in there. But you need to know who's that incumbent. And the last one in number 20, this is the background of opportunities. And I see people rarely do this and more often than not confuse it with the background that the government puts into the PWS or the RFI, whatever documentation. The government has this background section. That is not an opportunity background. That is the background of their organization. And here's some of the stuff we do. Valuable information, but that's different than when I say capture should identify the opportunity background. Where did it come from? Who else bid on it? How many bidders were there? What contract vehicle was it on previously? All that kind of information is where did this opportunity come from? How did it get here? Right? Was there an industry day? Who was at that industry day showing interest? Those are all things that are around opportunity background. Sometimes we make them seem really big, but if you actually just watched or read the description of how do you do that particular task, gather opportunity background, you would find that it's not that difficult. It definitely is a process. You definitely have to read it, learn it, and follow it. But when you look at it, you know, it's not a secret. It's just a process, right? I think I said that a lot. So this information is what you need to gather to do that advanced qualification of an opportunity. If you don't gather this information, this should be your first sign that either your company is not working hard enough to win this, or that somebody else is able to access this information and you're not. And those are signs for why you should no bid. I described going after opportunities as kind of like digging gold out of a gold mine. There's definitely gold in the mine, but you're not there to dig gold out. You're there to remove the dirt. And this exercise, these tasks, help you identify the dirt, the opportunities that are not worth pursuing, that are in your pipeline. Okay, so let's just wrap up with who can help you gather some of this information. The contracting officer, I already talked about. The contract specialist is basically the same power as a contracting officer, except sign and commit the government. But everything else, they're right there. They work toe to toe. The contracting specialist is helping the KO pursue an opportunity or roll an opportunity out through the acquisition lifecycle, et cetera. So they're great sources of all the information I mentioned. If you can't find that information from them, then you start moving yourself through the rest of these people. Small business specialists, you need to identify who's working with the KO on this opportunity or in general and use them to gather information. Not everything, by the way, one piece of information at a time, do it piecemeal, and nobody feels overwhelmed. PCRs, I think I already mentioned them. The program office personnel, right? This is the actual people. So for example, NAV or PEO Digital in the Navy, they're the program office that would do SharePoint, let's say. But number 6 is agency stakeholders. And what I mean by this is, and I'll talk about this tomorrow more, but these are people who are using SharePoint. So if PEO Digital runs SharePoint, who are the key people using it that would have a massive amount of influence on what they're trying to get done? So you want to know those type of people. Number 7 are industry partners. Reach out to your teammates, the people you're potentially exploring this opportunity for, or with other businesses you have worked for in the past on other opportunities. You have teammates, you have people you have relationships with. Reach out to them. And then also reach out to the incumbent. First, you're finding out, are they going to go after it again? Second, you might be able to learn some information, right? So reach out to that incumbent and see if they'll share any information. Maybe they're looking for somebody to take it over because they graduated small and you can take it now, right? So earlier you reach out to them, the more chance they'll work with you. And the last one are PTECs, and they call them Apex Accelerators now. But these PTAC counselors have relationships with agency folks. They also have the ability and the training. They're at training this week, I think. They have the ability and training to reach out to the government and help you, to be able to give you guidance on how you can reach out, right? They're not going to do your whole job for you, but they'll give you ideas on how you can pursue a piece of information on that previous slide so that you can have success. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training, right? Capture should absolutely be a process in your company. Part of it being a process, and what those steps are. I gave you 20 steps today, right? Just screenshot those. I'm not going to send you slides, right? Just screenshot them and follow them. Put them into your pipeline because that's where those steps belong, is in your pipeline. The second thing is that the capture process should be a sales, not an administrative task. And what I mean by this is salespeople, us business developers and capture people, should be driving this because these steps lead to our success. We should not be doing it because, the head of sales or the head of the company is like, oh, you must have this information. I'm like, no, that's just an admin task. But if you see that these 20 tasks will lead to you winning more contracts, then it becomes a sales task. We want to do it, not we have to do it. So here's my tip for you. Take a look at those 20 tasks I mentioned and make sure your pipeline has room in there for that basic information. Sometimes we have pipelines that are all convoluted, but that is really good basic information. If you have it, rise it to the top. If you don't, put it into your pipeline. So every opportunity, you start looking at it from, do I have the basics yet? If you're looking to get some help in your company to go to the next level and you're doing 2 million or more or so, consider doing our BD Accelerator workshop. This is where we help you go to the next level, clear focused offer, understanding who to go out after, and then also just helping you establish relationships in those agencies you're trying to get to. One thing though, don't DM me about working with me unless you've watched 10 of my trainings. I need you to follow and understand our process. And when you do, then when we talk, I won't have to convince you or teach you. I've done 300 trainings. I teach everything I know here every day at noon. And so if you follow that, you can do what you need to do to succeed. And if you want my help, you reach out and be happy to talk to you about it. For everybody else, remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.